Sandra here from Create in Spain. Today's video is going to be about fonts and making the most use of the ones that you have. Now, if you're anything like me, you probably have in the hundreds of fonts, and probably out of those hundreds, you most likely probably only use about 20 on a regular basis. But sometimes you want to use a particular font and you can't quite work out how to use it for the reason that you want to use it, for the purpose, be it cutting out the lettering or stenciling or whatever. It may not be immediately available to do that because the font itself isn't suited in its current form. So I have some font here. And I've just written Magnolia because the font is called Magnolia Sky. It's a free font and it's a very attractive looking font. I really like it. Now, I have made this large on my screen so you can see what I'm doing more easily. But obviously, this mat here is A4 size and there's no way on earth I would be cutting that out in A4 of that particular size. But I want to show you how to make it more user-friendly. Even at this size, you can see that these lines here and here and here and here, for example, are very thin. And you may find, depending on what you're going to be doing with it, you may find that's too thin, but you like the style of the font. So first of all, I'm going to do something which I tend to do all the time with my fonts, just to keep me working safely. I'm going to remove the colour from the inside because this shows up immediately, all my cut lines, and I can tell where I'm going to be cutting that I don't want to be cutting, as well as a few other details. Now in this particular case, if I wanted this to cut out as one single word, there's a little bit of work that I would have to do. And to do that, I need to right click and I need to ungroup it. So now I can move my individual letters, and I can do that with a keystroke, or I can use the movement, position and size box up here, depending on what I want to do. I'm just going to use the arrow keys on my keyboard and move things along so that all these letters are overlapping. Because if they're not, they're going to cut out in individual letters. And if I was going to cut this out as a word, I really wouldn't want that to happen. So just going to move it so that they are all, a bit too far, they're all overlapping. Okay, now the other obvious error is this dot above the I is free floating. Now there's two ways of dealing with that. You either leave it alone and you just make sure that you remember to take it off your mat and put it on design as you wish. Or you can do a little cheat, which is to make a very, very thin object and then to join it with the accompanying letter. Now at the moment, none of this is joined up. So put a box around the entire lot, go to path and go to union, and hey presto, this will cut out as a complete word. Now this leads us to the second problem, which I mentioned before, and that is that these things here are too thin, perhaps. I mean, it'd be okay if I was cutting it out at this size, but if I was doing that at a quarter of the size, I don't think so somehow. So, unless you want to do a lot of editing with the nodes, and believe me, I avoid that if I possibly can, here is how you do it. Select it, and then go to path, and then go to offset path. Now, the default will vary depending on what you've got your default set to, but if you actually want to do it properly, take it down. In this particular case, because I've got like a rounded font, I want a rounded offset on it. And I want to take this down to, for example, 0.1. Now I could take it down more than that, or I could take it down less. But then when I click that, I thicken those lines so that they will cut out relatively easily without losing too much of the shape of the lettering. Now, the reason I would do this in a large size is so that when it's actually shrunk down to the size that you want to do it, you see that offset, if you applied the offset there, the offset would be far too big in comparison. If you've made your word really big to start with and applied a small offset, you've then got more chance of saving the integrity of the word. So that's one thing. Now, the next thing, what about if you wanted to make that into a stencil text? If you cut this out as a stencil, for example, if I was to put a background behind this at the moment, let's choose that box and put a colour in. There we go, we've got a colour, and send that to the back, arrange, send to the back, hopefully that'll do it. Yeah, it has. Okay, so if I were to cut that out now as a stencil, it will give me the outer shape, but I would lose all these little pieces that are inside closed paths. So all the letters that have got loops, so your A's, your B's, your G's, your D's, etc., P's, that traditionally have loops and maybe closed loops, you would lose all those details. But the other thing is, if you have a script, you'll also be losing these loops here. Not so good. Okay, I'm going to move this over to one side so I can pick it up later on. There we are. So how do we make this into a stencil? Well, it is very easy in Shortcuts a lot. You go to this little tag over here on the left, and it's not instantly obvious when you look at it as to what it is, but it's a stencil making tab. And if you go up here, it says stencil bridge size 0.350 centimeters. Now you can make it smaller if you want to, you can make it bigger. I'm going to keep it at 0.35 just so you can see what I'm doing. Now if you look at the text, the M's fine, no problem there. The A's fine, no problem there. The G definitely needs to have this linked in. So if I go inside the loop and just take this line over there, it will cut a piece out. Now that looks jagged because I have a very large size bridge. So I'm going to take this bridge down to 0.10 and I'm going to hit the undo button. So now when I do it, I have a smaller bridge, and you see it just puts in a small gap, and I can put one into this loop here, and I can put one in this hole here. I need one up above somewhere. You can choose, depending on the type of lettering you've got, you can obviously choose where you want to put the gap. And in there. And that's it, that's all I need. Okay, so now if I slide this back into place and I go select the whole lot, the next trick is instead of doing back minus front, you go to effects and you go to knockout. And then it will give you a choice on gaps, and you obviously don't want a gap for this, we just want it to cut it out as it is, and just hit OK. And you can see that it is done that rather nicely. But you can also see that when I click on the lettering, I still have the copy of my lettering. So if I want to use that for something else, I still have it. But this is what my stencil will look like. And as you can see, I've got the gaps. So if you look at where all the blue is, this is going to be cut solid. And you can actually see the effect that the stencil is going to give now. Okay, so you've now got a stencil of your wording that you can cut out, and you can use it multiple times. You can use it for airbrushing, dabbing ink through, painting. You could use it for texture paste, you can use it for all sorts of things. And that in itself is a usable commodity, but you still have this, which if you wanted to, you could cut out regardless. So there we are. That's how to make the most of the fonts. Hope you found it useful. Thanks very much for watching. Take care now. Bye bye.